Sometimes the story isn't in what gets said. It's in what quietly gets cancelled. And on the 2nd of December, that's exactly what happened to a room full of people who thought they already knew how this particular evening was going to unfold. The venue was London's Hippodrome. The event was one of Hayley Palmer's audience with shows, the kind of intimate evening where a broadcaster sits down with a well-known face and lets the audience in on the stories behind the headlines. And the guest lined up for the 26th of January was Mark Labbett, the Beast himself, stepping out of the quiz chair and into something far more personal. Except this time, personal wasn't just professional. It was complicated in a way that made the whole booking feel loaded before a single ticket had even been used. Because Hayley Palmer isn't just any broadcaster interviewing any quizzer. The two of them dated for a year. And the split, by most accounts, wasn't a quiet fade-out. It reportedly came just days after their anniversary, followed by Hayley blocking him entirely. So when this show was first announced, you can imagine the reaction from fans who follow both of their lives closely. An audience with your ex, on stage, in front of a paying crowd, months after a breakup that clearly wasn't gentle. That's not just an interview format. That's a genuine will don't they moment playing out in real time, and ticket holders knew it. Which makes the announcement that came on December 2nd land so differently. Hayley posted the update herself, keeping things brisk and professional, explaining simply that due to unforeseen circumstances, Mark wouldn't be appearing after all. No elaboration beyond that. No further detail about what those circumstances actually were. Just a clean, businesslike statement, followed immediately by reassurance for anyone holding a ticket, full refunds, no fuss, and a firm promise that the show itself would absolutely still go ahead. That phrasing is worth sitting with for a second, because there's a real tension underneath its calmness. Unforeseen circumstances is one of those phrases that tells you almost nothing and somehow makes people want to know everything. It's the kind of line that, in any other context, might pass by unnoticed. But given who was involved here, and given the history sitting quietly underneath this particular booking, it was never going to be read as neutral. Fans immediately started filling in the blanks themselves, wondering whether this was really about scheduling, or whether stepping into a room with an ex he'd been blocked by simply became too much the closer January got. And that's really the heart of why this story spread the way it did. Nobody actually knows what those unforeseen circumstances were. Hayley didn't say, and Mark hasn't publicly addressed it either. But audiences are remarkably good at reading tension even in the gaps left unspoken, and there's something almost cinematic about the idea of two people who once blocked each other online, being pulled apart again by an event that was supposed to bring them face to face for the first time since the breakup. There's a separate thread running through all of this too, and it's worth pulling into focus, because it changes the emotional texture of the whole story. Just weeks before this cancellation, Mark had appeared on Loose Women marking his 60th birthday, opening up with unusual candor about his health. He spoke about his diabetes diagnosis back in 2017, about the dramatic weight loss that followed, and about counting himself fortunate compared to others his age who are dealing with far more serious physical decline. There was real gratitude in how he talked about it. The sense of a man taking stock of where he is in life, aware of what he's managed to hold on to and not taking it for granted. Put those two moments side by side, and the picture becomes a little more layered than a simple will don't they cancellation. Here's someone who, only recently, was publicly reflecting on getting older, on health, on what really matters at 60. And then, weeks later, quietly steps back from an event that would have put him directly in front of someone from his past, in front of an audience, with no real ability to control how that moment unfolded. Whether those two things are connected is impossible to say for certain. But it's easy to understand why fans, watching both stories land so close together, started wondering whether there was more going on beneath the surface than a simple diary clash. Hayley, for her part, handled the fallout with the kind of composure that suggested she wasn't going to let one cancelled guest slow down her momentum. She was quick to point to a sold-out show with Suzi Quatro happening that same weekend, and teased an entire new lineup of celebrity guests still to be announced for 2026. It was a graceful pivot, the sort of response that reassures an audience without dwelling on the awkwardness sitting just underneath it. So maybe the real story here isn't really about a cancelled interview at all. Maybe it's about how much weight two words like unforeseen circumstances can carry when they're attached to two people whose history the public already knows far too well. What do you think actually happened behind the scenes? A simple scheduling issue, or something a little harder to walk into on stage?